guys, welcome to Clockwork down to Noodles for another breakdown of Undead Girl Murder Farce. Welcome back, guys. I'm hoping you guys are as excited as I am to delve back into the shadows, start racking our brains, start looking at all of the information and try to figure out exactly who is at fault in this farce. I think I know who it is. I feel very certain. Kudos to this show for making me do the loops, making me literally sit up after watching the anime thinking about it. I've even knocked one of my friends into watching the show just so I can see what they think. You guys had some different ideas as well, which I think is really fun. Big hats off because the show isn't over just yet. We are still not quite got our conclusion on this case yet. Thank you, because my biggest problem with Moriarty the Patriot was a lot of the cases would be wrapped up in one episode. To me, there's no suspense, there's no payoff or anything. Now, in this case, it's 3 episodes. It's 3 episodes of trying to rack my brain. Who has a motive? Who's got the alibi? Who's it likely to be? I feel like I was pretty warm last week anyway, and I've just built on my case. I think I'm still on the Butler did it train, but I'm going to let you guys know why. Also rack through one of the theories that you guys had, because you guys had a different theory. I did keep that in my head just whilst I was watching the first half of the episode, because at one point it did seem like things were lining up for you guys to be right. Before we get going, make sure you guys are subscribed. It really helps us out. And of course, in 3 weeks' time, we have the Midway Review. If you are new to the channel, the Midway Review is where I am going to crown top 3 OPs, EDs, and current standing of anime. I like checking with you guys, tell you roughly what I'm thinking. We like to use that as a benchmark to see at the end of the season review how different my opinion has become. Season is off to a solid start. I initially wasn't very hyped with the season. You guys know I actually had a gap. That's why I'm doing Clockwork Rewind right now, where I'm reviewing older animes that I really enjoy, because I just didn't have too much catching my eye. It's actually turning out to be very, very good. And I've got some shows I didn't think I would enjoy actually creeping up onto my list. So I can't wait to discuss that with you guys. This week's Clockwork Rewind is going to be thematic with the current season. Make sure you guys ring the bell if you want to get that notification when I post about that. We'll give you guys the show title in a few days' time so you guys can get ahead and also get hyped for the show that I will be reviewing. Let's go into episode number 3. We're going to get ahead on these jokes this week. My vibe right now is these two bouncing off one another. Suguru laughing as well at her puns is my vibe. I don't know why I like it so much. I really appreciate these two. And there was that fun moment this week where she tells him to knock it off, and it's just the way that she's able to do it in her tone. It's not aggressive, but when she says it, it's very sharp. Maybe she's going to be on the shortlist to win Best VA at the end of the season, because most of the time it goes to a guy. But I will say I am absolutely obsessed with her delivery. Haven't checked out who she is yet. I recognise her voice from somewhere. I have a feeling she was young Vash from Trigon Stampede. Love the way Mark starts to look for Aya's body when he's sat at the table. Still believe that he is there for a reason, and we have even more reason to believe that it was all planned right at the start when we see them trying to fob him off. The new theory that you guys came up with in the comments was it was the boys, the kids, the siblings. Mainly, I think it was the older son you guys were honing in on. I wasn't convinced, but I wasn't going to be that person who just denied it, just in case I was wrong. I kept it in my brain. I will say it is Raoul, who is very quick to dismiss the detectives. He doesn't trust them. He doesn't want them to be there. He then announces that he was watching them the whole time for that beginning bit. Suguru then says, actually, I know you were there. I saw you. That's what makes me think the entire sequence of Mark was used as a act, and it also actually helps with the section we're about to go into when Aya really pulling some Sherlock Holmes skills with her level of deduction. They use Mark as the example in front of everybody at the dinner table. Nothing says I am very skilled than being able to do it on the spot and go up, I'm going to cold read this guy right now in front of everybody, because it's just come from the point where Raoul doesn't like them. They do come across as quite a goofy pair, but I believe they're doing it as an act. You see somebody as goofy, you don't really take them seriously. Playing the long game, they're waiting for things to basically fall into their lap. I did really like the deduction sequence, and of course having Sherlock Holmes's name dropped, every single small little detail starts to add to the bigger details and you start drawing connections between the two. There's also this argument that sometimes you add too much importance on the little details. I like the way that we actually get a little picture of Mark, the coach driver, because he could have just been a side character. Exactly what I think Moriarty the Patriot would have done. He would have just been a side character. The fact that Mark now has a backstory, really hope Mark does actually survive this and he gets to go home to his wife, because it really seems like she cares for him, and I ship those two, and I really hope that those two can work it out. I really got invested in that bit. Really nice. But let's quickly go go to the Sherlock Holmes little reference because that's what we live for on this channel. Aya admiring Holmes and also admitting that he's probably smarter than her. She would not want to actually meet Sherlock because he's a weirdo. That's why we love him. We love him because he's a weirdo. Definitely think Aya has her own quirks as well. I do hope we get to meet him because he's definitely listed on the cast. It would be interesting to see him going head to head and how they're going to portray him. He also works very similar to Aya with deduction. And if he is even more smarter than Aya, would he have already figured out this case is what I'm wondering. Really excited to get that name drop because it's like, oh, it's going to happen at some point. He exists in this world. If you guys don't know, I'm sorry. Sherlock Holmes isn't real. Oh, I'm so sorry. He is a fictional character. But in this world, he is real. And that's why I like it because we've always had Dracula in there as well. The guy in the OP is Arsene Lupin. He's a fictional character too. At work, just check out who he was because it was really bugging me. I was like, I already know this name. And of course, it's the games, it's the animes that he's been in. Absolutely love the effect that we get when we replay all the sequences. So you have the detective, Goddard, all in colour. Everything else is out of focus as we're running through it. It's like we're going back on a film footage and we're pausing it, go back where the alibis are. Who can account for who? Love the next sequence for composition. You guys know me, I get very excited with composition. This is nice. We have the detective split right down the middle of the, I think it's a candelabra in the middle of the table. One side you've got the detective, second side you've got the family. The suspects are being interviewed right now by our detectives. Most of our suspects are on the right. We have immediately ruled out Charlotte. One of my friends wanted to actually go for the most illogical option and say that it was Charlotte. If it does turn out to be Charlotte, hats off to you, but I don't believe it is. I do think we can actually rule that one out quite quickly. She is also said to have an alibi in this, so it's definitely not her because she's backing up the maid, but the maid wasn't always accounted for. Nobody technically saw Hannah after eating. Gives you plenty of time for her death, maybe to even be earlier. Sus of Rao when he started to trigger quite quickly. He avoids the question and jumps quite quickly to the offensive. Your ideas in my head, and of course that backs you guys up. Wondering if it was a possibility the two were in on it. They do seem to also give each other a lot of sideways glances. That also could just be a brother thing. They see them as outsiders. A few of you guys also commented that they just didn't like humans, even if they're not killing people. They might still have that superiority. They think that dad did the wrong thing. We see that with Claude as well, where he goes into threaten Subaru. He says, my dad might have signed that pact, but I'm still a vampire. Backs you guys up as well. Claude hasn't got an alibi. He was technically alone in his room. So he's on that little short list we have going on. Rao just didn't answer. If anything, out of the two brothers, I was more suspicious of Rao. When it comes to the short list, it's actually Claude that ends up on that short list. It was Rao. He gets angry. He avoids the question and they have to push him to eventually answer. This also could be the fact that he sees them as outsiders, he doesn't like humans, or he sees them as being con men. You guys did hire them. It reminds me a bit of Gordon Ramsay Kitchen Nightmares. It's so scripted. They hire him. He comes in, suggests a few things. They get angry at him despite the fact that they ask for help. There's obviously sometimes there's a strife, there's a fight, throw something in the lake. Then they listen to him and then things work out. Goddard hired them. They then get angry at them for pointing a few things out. Again, they help out and then officially they're going to find out the answers. Aya clamping down on Raoul I think was interesting. I did also think it was weird that she didn't put him on the shortlist. I did feel like Raoul technically didn't have a alibi for about half an hour. All last week, I did tell you guys that at one point I thought it was Goddard. I have officially ruled him out. I couldn't make it work. I went back. I basically ran this scenario with it being each of the characters. I just couldn't make a scenario with Goddard work at all. The guy signed a peace pact. Seemingly loved his wife. He also hires them as well. Somebody who's doing bad things. You don't want people to know about your bad things. So him then hiring them, even if it is just a show, didn't really strike me as something that he would do if he was guilty. He wouldn't even just mention it. For me, Goddard is out already. The maid did seem very, very sus. Initially, I did wonder if it was just because she's not used to talking. Everyone's looking at her. Maybe she's nervous about actually saying anything. Maybe she had witnessed something. I am starting to clamp down on her and the butler being in cahoots. Maybe she actually did witness something. Maybe she saw something and she's too nervous to say anything. You see her playing with her hands. She seems really nervous when she speaks. She's quite shifty with her eyes. That initially got me last week with Goddard. If you are nervous or trying to think up stuff on the spot, you will be shifting your eyes a little bit. You're looking over there. I'm looking over here now. I'm looking over there now. The maid also seems to be playing with her hands. And that is also something that people do when they're under stress or they get very, very nervous. It might just be the fact that she's not used to talking in front of people. She does also add in the fact that she went on a bathroom break after she told the story. Initially, it was, oh no, I didn't leave. Oh no, actually, I might have taken a break, but it took a few minutes. Couldn't rule rule out Albert at all. And if anything, he was my prime suspect last week. I am fully on Albert being the suspect this week. I have clamped down on it. I am locking in. Did he do it alone or did he work with someone? Because I believe with the Hugo bit a bit later on when I'm saying I've got a good contact, I think he means Albert. We're going to have to wait on this one, but I am now firmly locked in with Albert as my guess. Things do get very heated and a first half of our show gets cut short while Charlotte getting very upset and walking out. But we do now officially have two suspects on our list, Claude and the butler. I think she might have been hoping he would react. She did say while they were all talking at the table, she was looking at the vampire hands. None of them were wounded. Predict it's been about 3 days because they even used the guy at the end, a hunter, his ticket to say 3 days ago he was in Berlin. It wouldn't have been him. 3 days ago would still mean if they were a vampire and they had touched silver, they would still have a wound. It would be visible. So when Aya says I was looking at their hands, it made me think it's none of them. It's none of the family. The boys are just getting reactive because, again, they don't like humans. They're getting probably angry as well to being put on that list. My theory is at the moment it's Albert. I want to tie the maid in, but I also want to keep it as she probably just saw something or she suspected it was Albert, but she couldn't say anything because it's her employer. Aya does reveal afterwards that she isn't 100% really certain on anything. If anything, she's just biding time. If you buy yourself some time, people start to crack, the stuff starts to fall into place. Tells Shizuka to go and keep an eye on the servants. These cases in real life, some cases take decades, some cases go cold. I am always impressed when I hear about cold cases being solved 20 years down the line. Most of the people involved have passed away or something and there's no evidence. How the hell did you do that? So I'm impressed that this has taken a few days and buying time as well. I don't think you should be rushing this kind of thing. Now the Claude threat, as I said before, I think it's an empty threat. He's just angry. I think he's upset because he's been labelled as a suspect. He also sees them as con men as well. His hands were clean. His hands looked absolutely fine. You even see it when he's holding his throat. He has nothing on his hands. An angry person, but he isn't no murderer. The butler tries to leave the room despite the fact that Goddard wasn't even in the building. It makes me even more sus. The fact that it probably is going to boil down to a humans versus vampire thing. But Goddard does tell us that he's actually lost a lot of family, which makes me really sad as well because he does seem like a pretty reasonable guy. He doesn't want to hurt people and he's stuck by his pact, I'll attack you if you attack me kind of guy. He seems reasonable. He provides food for his guests. Obviously, he has a family. He had a wife. I've been saying it to a few friends. He looks like Tony Stark, but in anime form. I think his design is really cool. The butler does look very, very shaken when he's told that you can't leave. And then he says bad things against Suguru. And obviously Shizuka's, I don't care, it's not Aya. He's capable of saying bad things, but then apologising because he realises he steps out of line. Absolutely love the lens flare we get during this sequence now where we go into the forest and there's fog absolutely everywhere. Just has such a nice effect. It looks warm around him. It's quite a warm colour as well. It is sad to learn that a lot of his family have been killed by humans, which made me think, well, it's probably gonna be a human which did it again. There's a human involved who doesn't like the vampires. It's also a nice sequence because it actually allows us to get some information about Oni. Kill the Fushi, but they also can't because they are vulnerable and dumb. They might be powerful, but they also have their flaws, very similar to vampires. Where are you, my Pain Train family? Are you out there? I would like to know if any of my Two Eternity guys are out there because we know all about the Fushi and how immortal he is. And it was just a nice little laugh. It made me excited to hear the Fushi's name being said. The humans hunted the Oni to extinction. No surviving whole Oni left. Well, humans making things go extinct has a bit of a ring to it, doesn't it? Probably the most logical route it's probably going to be. Now, the surprise attack was really, really nice. I like the way that it shows you Goddard in action as a vampire, hunting down his prey. It had a really nice kind of vibe when he was going down the tree and you couldn't see him. I love the fact that he also goes invisible. The shadow disappears. The lantern hits the ground. I thought the kick was really nice. I really enjoy seeing Goddard in action. It's going to be sad to actually lose him because I think he's actually a pretty cool character. As he says, I'm doing it in self-defense. He got you in the neck. Obviously, if you hadn't been a vampire who healed, probably would have been a fatal blow to a human. Interaction is very, very important because it tells you he didn't actually kill the wife. As we said, that he was at the other side of Berlin. But he does give us some very important information about Hugo, Hunter, who had the silver stake in the first place, had an inside ally. And this inside ally is what actually ends up being a case closed with our final line. We're going to end the farce of a murder case. Roll credits. They figured something out. It's definitely apparently going to be the butler. Maybe he's friends with Hugo or something. I don't know. Can't work out the motivation. You guys will have to let me know where you're standing now that we've had another episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I have fun with this. I'm really hoping a lot more of the show is going to be like this. I hope that we're going to get more and more unique cases. Can't wait to meet the rest of the cast because we know Sherlock Holmes and Dear Watson is out there somewhere. Very excited to get that name drop because I get excited for what is coming our way in the show. I think this show is doing a solid job of keeping up a mystery. There's a lot of nice attention to details when it comes down to Mike and his shirt and stuff. Very happy that the show is taking its time, not rushing. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I will see you guys next week. Have a great day, guys. Bye bye.